What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
And welcome back, guys. It's another beautiful weekend. For you guys, it may not seem like a long time, but for me, it's been quite a while. I had some podcasts banked up. I actually started a new job. So between the training and not being home, because I've been flying to Sacramento, going all the way east to El Centro. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's a little further out in the desert in California. Just been doing a lot of running around, so I haven't been the most active on the Limelight Highlight page, as you guys can see. But I do want to start off by saying thank you, everyone, for showing the podcast so much love, showing the page a ton of love. Our listeners are going through the roof. Like, this time, I'm not even exaggerating. It's actually, they always say fake it till you make it, but this time we're actually doing some things, you know? So I just want to say thank you. Everybody who's tuning in, who's subscribing, who's commenting, who's sharing. It means a lot. And as I said before, when you share, when you comment, when you engage with the podcast, it gets more people entertained and into the podcast. And if your first time is actually joining us now, I highly recommend you go listen to the previous couple podcasts we had out. They are great with some of my really good friends. And once again, for those of you who are just joining us now, this is the Limelight Highlight. I am your host, Jonathan Rosario, and this is a podcast that I've created to highlight a lot of the good and positive things that people are doing out, regardless of how big or small they are. All the good deeds need to be highlighted and brought into the limelight, hence the name, because if you guys pay attention to the news, you know it's not all dandelions and butterflies. So this is the reason I made this podcast. But back to what's going on, little updates. Once again, it may have only been a week for you guys, but it's been like 3 for me. So I'm trying to get back into the groove of things. I'm back home. I'm getting the stuff set up and situated. I still got more training to do, so I got to fly back out to Sacramento at the end of this month. So I'm going to make sure I get another podcast out before the end of this month. I was in Japan the last 3. I know you guys hear about Japan a lot because of the last few podcasts, but it's been crazy. Everything's been going all over the place, you know. I hope everybody had a good Easter or spring solstice or whatever holiday you guys either celebrate or don't celebrate on a Sunday on the 21st, or yeah, it was the 21st. Anyway, one of those things. A couple events that are coming up is the Block Gives Back. They are having, you know, once again, I sponsor them in the beginning of the month. They are having their last event of this month, next Saturday, coming up on April 27th. It is the 4 Blocks in 4 Weeks event. They will be hosting it at 2800 North 26th Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They will be starting at 9 a.m. So be sure to show up, show out, and help out however you can. Volunteer, get in contact with those guys. Visit the page for all the details if you need more. This month is Autism Awareness Month. And I also got hit up on the page on the Limelight Highlight Instagram from Letitia in Philadelphia. She actually wanted me to, she brought it up saying it's a good way to collaborate for the 8th Annual Youth Engagement Conference. I dropped the ball heavy on this one, guys. I'm sorry. It was on 4/20, and it is I'm pretty sure it's the Humane Society that's actually helping out those people. It's a leadership, you know. We've been speaking about it constantly throughout the podcasts of the previous month, of how, you know, we don't live in the greatest of cities as far as friendliness and kindness, but the Department of Human Services in Philadelphia Youth Leadership Council, they hosted their 8th annual event. So be on the lookout next year. If you guys want to, I'm going to stay on top of this and try not to drop the ball again. Once again, I apologize, Letitia, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. Another thing going on this month is, actually it's next month. it's May 18th, and May 18th, they're actually doing a challenge. It's a autism awareness challenge, and I'll get you the details there in a second. It's May 18th, hosted by the Eagles. It's an autism challenge where the alumni, coaches, executives, cheerleaders, and our mascot for the Eagles, Swoop, they go out on Saturday, May 18th, 2019, and it'll feature a one-day bike ride and a family-friendly 5K run walk, as well as a Friday night kickoff party at Lincoln Financial Field. It's 100% participant-raised funds, and it'll go towards autism research and programs for their founding beneficiary institutions, along with other area institutions advancing autism research. I thought that was really cool to bring up on this podcast because it's still Autism Awareness Month. And to get into the podcast this month, I actually came across this story that I kind of wanted to bring you guys up on. It's about a 5-year-old autistic kid and his mother. So I'm an avid moviegoer. I don't know how you guys feel about the movies, but just being home for the last week from traveling, I went to 2 different movies. I saw Hellboy and I saw Shazam finally. Great movie, Shazam, by the way. Hellboy, don't see it. That movie was garbage. But anyway, back to this story. So Dumbo came out. Dumbo is a kid-friendly movie. We all know, Dumbo, if you're old enough. You grew up on Disney movies. Dumbo, the flying elephant, big old ears. So his mother, she took her 5-year-old son who has autism, to the movies, and they were, in quotations, forced out after being confronted by a heartless woman. Now, I know there's always 2 sides of the story. So her side is the movie came out, and 30 minutes into the movie, her son's getting excited, and when he gets excited, he kind of, he yells. I mean, he's 5 years old. Autistic or not, all kids that age get excited about things. They jump around. They're energetic. They have a bunch of energy. So he was jumping around, I guess, a lot more than a kid should in a movie theater. And they were getting dirty looks, and she was getting a little embarrassed from her son kind of jumping around. Any parent would, and especially in a movie theater environment. And the lady looked back at her and kind of looked at her, gave her a dirty look, and she told the lady, "I'm sorry, he has autism." And she kind of said she didn't care if he had autism. He should stay home if he can't stay still. Now, she kind of got really upset, took her son out to go see the movie, got confronted by that lady, so she decided they were going to leave the movie theater. And in doing so, he took a huge tantrum. I don't know much about people with autism or people who have kids who are autistic, but I've seen certain episodes that, kids kind of have tantrums, especially ones that have autism and things of that nature. So I can understand the kid getting, kind of acting out more than usual. And they're special needs kids. They're not one of those just hit him and he'll listen kind of things. It's a lot deeper than that. But anyway, she goes on to say she deals with it a lot, and she works with actual autistic adults, and they kind of run into those problems a lot. So I just thought this was a good story to bring up because I wanted to know how you guys felt. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Once again, I always say there's 2 sides of the story. You could say he has autism, whatever the case is. People should be sympathetic about it. But at the same time, a part of me feels, once again, I'm an avid moviegoer. And autistic or not, even if you have a 5-year-old, a kid can't, granted, it was a kid's movie. Don't get me wrong. But a movie's a movie, and it's kind of, you got to be silent about it and stuff like that. But she kind of brought this up to the movie theater, and she was hoping that they hold screenings for those with special needs to avoid similar confrontations happening. And I thought that was a really good idea because around where I live, there's actually a movie theater called Grossmont. And this isn't for special needs kids, but this is tailored. They have specific times on Sundays, I believe, and actually during the week on Tuesdays. And they're tailored to people who have kids, like toddlers and stuff like that. And you can actually go watch the movie. It'll be cheaper than an actual regular movie. The lights are not as dim. It's not as dark, so they're a little brighter than the regular lights that you would go see in a movie theater. And the volume isn't as loud, to freak out a baby. If you decide to go see a movie and you want to bring a baby, you don't want to be that person bringing a baby in a movie theater, because you know how loud they get. If they start crying, this movie theater is actually, these specific times and slots are tailored to those people who have kids or babies or infants or toddlers or whatever, and they need to go out, or they don't need to, but they want to go out and go see a movie. Everybody needs a little break, So I just kind of want to know what your guys' idea is behind that. I mean, granted, we all know that that's a really good idea, having those segments, but how do you guys feel about the lady confronting the mother with the autistic child? Was she right? Was she wrong? Just share your opinions. Write to me on limelight@gmail.com. I'd love to hear it, and I'll read it I'd read the responses. I'll either share them on the page, or I'll bring them up on the next podcast. Now, our next actual topic that I wanted to bring up was a friend of mine, actually a listener of ours, Jay Pierre. She actually shared a story about a group of fourth graders listening to a speech about believing in yourself and separating yourself from toxic relationships, whether they be friendships or family members, whatever the case might be. And it was a little video on Instagram, and it was really cool. It's by I gotta give you guys the name. I think it's called Colored. What is it? Oh, give me 1 second. It's Colored. It's actually Colored. It's Colored. Color coded at Instagram, called It's Colored. And it's basically just everything positive except for people of color. And and the video was showing a fourth grader crying, kind of from what the speech was about. I guess it, kind of touched him in a certain way. I guess he felt, it hit home. So he started crying, and you have his classmates kind of rallied around him and kind of propped him up. They're giving him some support, rather than, kids are kind of cruel, making fun of him or whatever the case is. But I think that's really good. We tend to have this macho man persona, and we try to, kind of stay out of tune with our feelings, I guess, for lack of better words. But this video was pretty good, and I thought it was something to share, because kids need to share their feelings, and for the fact that he has a little support system and showing it in an environment where you kind of need to let it out every now and then, especially when it's news. And I mean, granted, we've all been in the position where we've had some toxic family members or toxic friends, or been in a toxic relationship that we didn't know how to escape, and we kind of felt trapped. So if this kid felt the need to cry, I'm just glad that his classmates kind of rallied around him, made him feel better. I thought that was cool. And once again, it was from one of our listeners, which means you guys are interacting. You guys are writing in. You guys are showing me what you guys are seeing and sharing with the podcast. And that's kind of everything that I kind of wanted to happen with this podcast. It's definitely one of those things that I've been harping on and trying to get everybody to talk about. So thank you, J. Pierre, for that. And one of the last stories I wanted to talk about was about the 7-Eleven owner. So there's this kid, he's 17 years old. He was caught on a security camera stealing some food. This was in Ohio. And instead of the owner of the 7-Eleven calling the cops on him, he actually gave him more food. And so what happened was he was caught pocketing a bunch of snacks, a bunch of food, little items and stuff. So when he went up to the counter, if you ever stole something, you kind of pocket a bunch of stuff. You get something cheap just to pay for it, so it don't look like you're stealing. Anyway, he got caught. So the guy told him to, empty out his pocket, show me everything that you tried to steal, or I'm going to call the cops. Kid obliges. He opens up his pockets, puts everything out, and he says, "Look, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to feed me and my little brother, because they didn't have any food. Growing up poor in the hood and trying to feed yourself isn't always the best, especially if you're underage. 17 years old. I mean, you're taking care of your family, as best you can. Is, I mean, if he even has a family, just as, little